Welcome to the Best Known Church Show, where we show you how to 10x your reach with church marketing that will help you increase your impact, make more disciples, and become the cornerstone of your community again. This is for the leaders with an outrageous vision, because anything less would be an inaccurate reflection of our Creator. The ones who have unreasonable faith, because you know God works unreasonable miracles. And the ones who are relentless in the pursuit of your calling, because anything less would not make a good and faithful servant. If that's you, you're in the right place. Now, please welcome your host and guide on this journey to become the best known organization in your community, Justin Nava.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome, Pastor, to the Best Known Church Show. Look, today we're talking about some pretty serious stuff, and I want to, again, bring it to you from a communication marketing platform because the church is in a bad spot. Now, I don't think it's irredeemable. I think it could be a lot worse. However, something needs to be done. We've got some stats that are coming out from Barna that shows people don't trust the church as much. The trust is harder to get out there. And, really what we have is an environment where it's very easy for people to either A, not trust the church, not want to get involved with the church, have nothing to do with the church, B, go worse from apathy to just outright dislike or hatred, which we understand in ministry can be an issue and something to be expected. However, we want to be hated for the right things, not the wrong things. But then also, we have people that just prefer false teaching churches. And I get in trouble a lot with my marketer friends. They're like, don't get into like calling out false teachers. But hey, here's the deal. If your church, if you're an honest, God-fearing, God-loving, people-loving, neighbor-loving, Bible-believing, faith-based church, you need to get yourself out there. Because if you're not out there, false teachers are going out and preaching a false gospel that people will then believe and go to. And while we're sitting over here in our little hidey hole doing what we think is right, we're not going out and making new disciples. We're just letting other people be falsely led. And so what I want to do is I want to take the next 30 minutes, Pastor. I'm going to make this the most valuable 30 minutes of your day and go over exactly what's happening now and what your church needs to do to go from there's a church, 40% chance that I don't really care about them or believe about them or whatever. I want you to go from just apathy, hey, there's a church over there, to I need to be a part of that church. I need to go to that church. I need to come and see or go and see what exactly is going on with that church. If you haven't watched one of these shows before, thank you for watching. We're talking about everything from marketing for your church to become the best known organization in your community. I don't want you to be the best known church. I don't want you to be the best known religious institution. I want you to be the best known organization. I want people to know more about your church than they do about Walmart. Everyone knows where Walmart is, when they're open, and what to expect when we go. I want more people to know where your church is, when you're open, and what to expect when they get involved in your church. And if that sounds like something you want to do, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening, podcast, YouTube, Facebook. And we gotta stay connected here because 2022, coming out of 2020, 2021, 2022, a lot of churches have been focused on how do we do what we've been doing in the new way? And instead, we need to be focusing on how do we engage people, disciple them in the new ways, so where we're not changing the message, we're probably changing the medium. And I think God has given us a lot of tools to really explode how our church can be known in the community. Our communities used to be the size of a neighborhood. Our cities used to be 30 to 300 people. Now our neighborhoods are 300 to 3,000 people. And I'm a huge, huge fan of the local neighborhood church. Some of the best churches I've ever been to are those local churches. And that's who this that's who this show is geared towards. So if that's you and you want to see exactly how we can make a better engaging impact on the community, this is the show for you. And so I want to go into the Barna state of the church. Now, I'm going to be referencing, because there's a lot of stuff out there, I'm going to be referencing our friends at Church Fuel. Mike Lukaszewski and his team put together a really concise article, and it's not linked in the comments, but I will link it down in the comments once the live stream is over. Down in the description, because you should go read it. and they've got a lot of great action steps. But also, I'm going to insert a little bit of my own philosophy from what I've seen. Church Fuel is a great leadership development platform to develop your church, your systems, your processes. And from some of their action steps, I want to speak into those a little bit, because I think if you take their action steps a little too literally, you could miss the point of what the result should be. So we're going to go into this, the state of the church, and what we need to do about it. Again, Church Fuel has some great action steps here, but I'm going to just kind of insert a couple of things here that, is going to be really better for your church. And this really comes from an experience I had in high school. When I was in youth, we had lock-ins. We had all the typical stuff in the early 2000s for youth: lock-ins, movie nights, dodgeball nights, basketball nights, all that good stuff. Movie nights, video game. We had video game nights, right? Those were a lot of fun. Always brought in a lot of kids. I invited my friend to church. I call him David. And Dave was like, I don't know if I want to go to that. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's pizza and basketball night. Like, we're going to eat pizza, play basketball. Someone will have, we can bring our Game Boys and play our Game Boys if we want, just hang out and get some free food. Like, awesome. Who would say no to that? But David said, I don't really want to go. Like, are they going to preach it? Are they going to preach? I'm like, no. Like, he's probably going to say a prayer before we eat the pizza. God bless this pizza, right? How ironic is that? Before we gorge ourselves. But he was like, nah, no thanks. Now, me being born and raised good old Baptist boy, I'm like, how do you not go for free pizza and basketball? We didn't have a basketball hoop. We could have free pizza, probably having healthy food at home. I just didn't understand why he would choose to strike that down. And it's really because I found out that he went to a church event with another one of our friends. And basically it just was like a bait and switch. Come get preached at for 20 minutes to have a slice of pizza. Like, come on, don't do that to your kiddos. And so ever since that moment, I've always been a little cautious of how we present our church, how we execute events and services at our church, and again, how we promote our church, because we don't want to do a bait and switch. Right? We don't want to be a timeshare salesman. My cousin loves the timeshare salesman because he's really good about going, getting the free thing, and getting out of there. I mean, seriously, they went to Vegas for a weekend and sat in for an hour and basically said all the right things to not go any further, and they got a free weekend in Vegas or something like that. It's crazy. A lot of folks will have that assumption that if I go to church, they're going to preach at me, they're going to give me a presentation, they're going to want to dunk me in some water, because either A, they have a preconceived notion, B, they've seen stuff on social media, or C, they just have assumptions based on what they've seen in the media. And the data proves this now. Barna has come out with the data. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to share my screen if you're watching this. If not, I will be reading this for the audio viewers here. Share screen. Those are my show notes. So let me get those off of here. There we go. Perfect. So this is Barna's new data. What Barna's new data says about the perception of the church. Again, our friends at Church Fuel put this out last week. And so we're going to take a look at this. Now, look, the goal here, I think this is very important to start right off at the bat. The goal here isn't to have the culture agree with everything we do as churches. We know that is really impossible. The Bible tells us there are going to be non-believers. We will never achieve 100% belief and faith in the world. That's just where we are. What we can do is correct their perception, which I love here. Perception can be a stumbling block. And that's really kind of where I'm coming from here. Perception can be a stumbling block. God can be calling people. This is what I tell people a lot when we do the marketing for their stuff. God can be calling people to your church, but if you are not on top of the ball and above reproach and everything that you do to present yourself, that will be a stumbling block that you have put in front of someone to answer God's calling on their hearts. If your website is slow loading, if your message is unclear, if your photos are generic, if your sanctuary is empty on your website, if you don't have an easy way for people to follow up, if they can't find you in Google, you are presenting stumbling blocks to people that God is calling to your church. And in spite of those stumbling blocks, some people will follow that calling, and I think others will say, nah, okay? So we need to make sure we do everything we can to remove those stumbling blocks, including this. Let's take a look at this first stat here. I got to find a faster way to, here we go. I got it. Okay. 41% say the church is known for the things they are against. Now, this one's a tough one because a lot of people will judge your church based on what they've seen other churches doing and other Christians are doing. And that's a double-edged sword because a lot of times, we will tell our congregations, hey, you are the church. You are representing, we used to tell kids this at youth camp. You are representing the church and Jesus. Don't be stupid. Okay? And so often, again, this comes from people judge our church based on what other churches have done. They will look and see, well, this church just preaches this. This church just yells like this. This church is doing these crazy things, right? We've seen the TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter videos go viral of a pastor preaching that Democrats can't be saved. They're irredeemable. We've seen pastors talk about facial hair is unbiblical, and there's no scriptural reference in these clips. We know they're just preaching personal opinions. Whatever you agree with it or don't agree with it, the fact is that is known better than what your church is doing in the community. That is known better than the hundreds of people that you're feeding, the hundreds of people that you're witnessing to, serving, the lawns you're mowing, the lives you're changing, the people that you're saving from suicide, the kids that you're saving from drugs, the kids that you're saving from sinful acts. All that is left aside because another preacher, another pastor, another church does something stupid. And I'm not even talking about from the pulpit, but they are doing things and they are being promoted, shared, and they are louder than your church. Because your church is not doing enough. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And I think if you're watching this show, you understand that is kind of that's why you're here. My church is not doing enough, and people don't know where we are. They don't know when we are. They don't know what about us, and they think we're just another Bible thumping, yell at you KJV church, and that's not who we are. We need to change this. And what you have to do is you have to then make efforts to be louder than those people. So even if, worst case scenario, even if they say, you know what, all these churches are crazy, but at least this one cares about our community. At least this one has saved people from drugs and suicide. At least this one was there for my family when we were on the verge of divorce. At least this one my kid likes to go to and has fun at and seems to really enjoy having them. At least this one looks like they do what they would believe. That's what you have to fight against. So at the very least, they say all churches are bad, but at least this one gets it. So what do you do about that? This is one of the things where I kind of go along with what Church Fuel advises. I would just say don't take it too far on the other way. They say use your social media channels to spotlight local organizations and businesses. I think this is something that we definitely want to do. It can be a slippery slope because you can go too far and your church becomes a local charitable organization or a local cause rather than something that is on mission to disciple and equip others for the work of the saints or whatever your mission statement is. That's why, in our social media posting strategy that we teach, the Beastly Formula, we only spend one post a week promoting something locally. I feel like I haven't seen this done in churches in a long time. We used to recognize people in our congregation. Hey, Timmy, stand up. Timmy got the gold medal in wrestling. Jonathan got All-State in football, or we'll say band, doesn't have to be sport. Kelsey got, she went and competed in the state trials for the mathathlon, I don't know, whatever they call the math competitions. We used to do that a lot more. I feel like I haven't really heard that lately. Maybe that's because churches are just splitting and just, hey, kids, don't even come to church anymore. Just go do your thing. I don't know. So I think you do need to use your social media channels, and this isn't just your church. Okay. Yes. Promote, local organizations, spotlight, share your congregation stories. Hey, congratulations, Tabitha. Have a great time at Corpus for the band competition. I don't know. Do that stuff, show that you're for your people, show that you're for your community. But also, I think a lot of times we push stuff out on social media, because we're having to preach against the things that we're having to preach on the things we're against. And even if we try to do it in a way that's loving and gracious, it can still come off of, well, they're only saying this because they're against, the latest ruling, or they're only saying this because some movie came out and they got to say this. Even though you are preaching positively, you're doing it as a reaction to something that's happening, so you can actually show that you're negatively against it. The way you fight against this is to always be promoting what you're for, which is why I always say a weekly post on social media. You got to promote what you're for, your core values, what you believe, something encouraging that you believe God will do, something that we can look forward to, a hope that we have. You can do a whole wide breadth. That's what the Beastly formula is that we teach: branding, encouragement, advertising, spark conversation, testimonial, something local, and then live. Something in your community. I think these are all things that we can approach in a overall view of what your church is, and therefore what your church is for. If you only post encouragements in light of negative news, it will still come off as promoting something you're against. Okay. So we need to give that holistic view of everything the church is for, including, yes, your local organization, but your Facebook page should not become a local promotion page. Okay. That's what I'm trying to say here. Which then kind of really good leads into the next stat here, which is 30% of people think the church is irrelevant in their lives. And honestly, I will agree. If depending on how they ask this survey question, I might be one of those 30%. The way many churches are being done, and if you honestly, Pastor, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not one of the churches that I'm about to refer to, but the way church is being done is highly irrelevant in people's lives. It's a come, check the box, feel good about yourself, get the kid off your plate, drop the kid off. It's not really for me, and then let's go out to lunch. I mean, I can't tell you how many churches I've been to where the only thing on my mind was, when are we going to go to lunch? And where are we going? Right. So, if you only meet if you're only meeting once a week, or only encouraging people to come to you once a week, and then you're not reaching out, you're not communicating, you're not connecting, you're not engaging throughout the week, you're going to be irrelevant. But my dentist is not relevant in my life, and I go see her twice a month, or twice a year. Okay. So if I only go to church twice a year, you're not going to be very relevant in my life. I'm trying to think of something else. My grocery store, I go to it once a week, maybe twice a week. It's pretty relevant, but I could live or die without it. I can go to a different grocery store. Worst case, I can go somewhere else. I can borrow a cup of sugar from my neighbor. I have other alternatives to my local HEB. I could go to Kroger, even though I don't want to. Plenty of other alternatives. Aldi, okay? So, there are alternatives if all you're doing is preaching a good message and putting on good music and shaking people's hands. I can get all that on my phone and with my friends. Okay. We have the world's best preaching on our phone. I can at any time go and listen to Billy Graham, Andy Stanley, Rick Warren. I wouldn't really I shouldn't put them in the same sentence, but hey, whatever. I can go listen to their sermons. I said that half tongue in cheek here. I can go listen to their sermons anytime, any place, anywhere on my phone. Same thing with worship music. So if that's what I'm concerned with as a church, then you're irrelevant. I don't need you. So how do you become relevant? Well, quite frankly, to be relevant, you have to be answering people's questions. You have to be encouraging them, but you have to be connecting with them, engaging with them. Okay. I like this. Let me just quote this here. Churchville says, when unchurched people think about church, they don't often make connection to their daily lives. People are struggling with issues and don't think the church is addressing them. They have a box. Church is for faith stuff, not work, school, money, mental health, or the real world issues. People are asking questions and they are not sure if your church is really answering them, because many churches aren't. They're just come to church, learn about Jesus, get your kids off your plate, sing some songs, and leave. And if that's what church is, if that's what many churches are, then yeah, I might be in one of them. However, I know many of my clients that are doing really, really good, heavy discipleship in a way that's engaging, in a way that's inviting, in a way that's appropriate for their community. And I think that's great. And so what do you do? How do you become more relevant in people's lives? Create non-Sunday content that is helpful for people's struggles. You can't just put stuff on social media and just expect it to take off. I think this is where a lot of churches and a lot of pastors and a lot of leaders in the church get social media wrong. And this is why social media, actually, if you come to me and say, hey, can you do our social media? We will tell you no. Because social media is not a silver bullet. It's not a magic cure. It's not something you can do and automatically thousands of people are going to know who you are and what you're for. Okay. In order to do that, you have to do something called advertising, in which social media is a medium, but it is not something that you can just do for free and expect to see a bunch of results. So what you need to do is create that non-Sunday content, create a blog, create a video series, do something here. Just turn on your laptop computer and just do a teaching series. There are ways to optimize it. There are ways to share it, but really it comes down to public relations, which is the last step of the church marketing, definitive church marketing method. And the reason is because no matter what you do on that side, if you don't have your other assets in line and in tune with your community and who you are and how you serve them, then any of that content that you do put out that's helpful will still be irrelevant because they can't connect with you. It will become the crazy guy down the street who's like, hey, invest in Bitcoin in 2012. And now it's 2021. And you're like, hey, man, that guy was right. He's still crazy. So even though you might say one good thing, if you don't have the proper reputation established and the proper means for people to understand who you are, why you are, and how they can engage, then that helpful content is not going to be that helpful. It's just going to be, hey, yeah, they got one thing right. So you have to make sure that you're reaching into people's lives and being well, having what am I trying to say? You're having a great reputation so that when you do connect with them through this helpful content that you're putting out, there are next steps that they can take that further engage in that discipleship process with your church, with your people through your church. So that's what you have to do. So you can't just start creating non-Sunday content. You have to do it in a way that leads people on that journey to connect with you and engage with you, or otherwise it's just going to be another article that someone's sharing on Twitter that has no actual traction to accomplish the mission that your church is on. That's what I'm trying to say. The last stat here that they share is 23%. That's 1 in 4. Let's just say 1 in 4 people say the church is detached from real issues in the community. Amen. I still might also be one of those 23%. I love the churches where the pastors have a heart on the congregation and a heart in the community, and their sermon series, while still exegetical, deal with those hurting topics. Suicide is on the rise. Divorce is on the rise. Addiction is on the rise. But we'll just do another sermon series on Jeremiah. This is something that, I butt heads on with a lot of pastors, and I might butt heads with you. I think there is a way, because I've seen other pastors do it. I've been in a church that we had that, where you can take topical issues, and if you are an exegetical pastor, you can still preach those exegetically. But are you really doing your community a service when you're spending? This is a joke I have. Why do all exegetical preachers feel the need to compelled to preach Romans in a year? Like, dude, and then some pastors are like, oh yeah, it should take 2 years, and some pastors are like, yeah, I mean, I get it. Romans is heavy, it's thick, there's a lot in there for the church. It's not doing much for the community. And if your worship service is, really to equip the saints, cool. What are you doing to address these issues in your community? Because if you can address these felt needs in your community, the things that people are like, where do I get the answer for this? Because nothing else is helping. That is one way that we can get people to enter into discipleship with our church, because you've got to bring the dead to life. And a lot of times it's going to come through good works, good acts of service, or just meeting them where they are. And that may mean meeting them where they are and addressing the issues that they have, and not saying, well, come here and hopefully one of the things that we're talking about will happen to address the things that you need. Okay? So, it's not so much being relevant, but it's addressing the hurt that they're having. I love it when a pastor is in tune and says, you know what, everyone in the country is suffering from this, but the people in my community are really suffering with that. So instead of preaching what's all over Twitter and all over the news on CNN or Fox News or whatever nationally is, I know that the people in our community are suffering because they're shutting down the shops, they're shutting down the manufacturing warehouses, they're shutting down the factories or whatever. People are having issues with money, which is causing issues with marriage, which is causing issues with addiction. And forget what everyone else is teaching. My people, my community need this. And not only that, the only way to get this is on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. And if you miss it, you miss it. You've got to get involved in your community. This kind of comes from posting non-Sunday content. Great. Pastors, Pastor, you teach every week. You come up with content, hours and hours, maybe even days of content every year, and you're just leaving it on the bookshelf. You've got to take it off, and you've got to reference it. You've got to share it. You've got to spread it, and you've got to keep doing that. You can't just put it online once and expect everyone to see it anytime they may need to. It's okay to repeat yourself. But what I'm saying is you have to take what you're already doing and present it in a way that people can engage with it and connect with it, whether that's through putting it through the free Google ads that we also do as part of the agency, through putting it on social media, through doing press releases, or getting on local blogs or radio shows. All this stuff really comes down to you, pastor, have to get out of your shell. You have to get your church out of your shell, and you have to go out and make people aware and know and how to engage and connect with your church. Get them involved. Okay. And this is where, the church fuel kind of says, hey, get involved in a local community organization so you can better understand the real issues of your community. This is something that you don't necessarily do as a church, but you do as a pastor, you do as a people. I think one of the greatest things, I have a client I don't want to say where they are because I don't want to get them in trouble in case, everyone offends something. Everything offends everyone in some way. They actually strategically in their congregation, they look at their unique gifts and they say, we need to get representation into the different areas. And so they actually have, some church members as part of the Rotary Club, some church members as part of the Cub Scouts, some church members as on the school board, some church members in other local organizations, wherever it might be, the local organizations that are really feeling the heart of the community. And they're not just there to just, inject their agenda in there. I don't think that's what it is at all. They are trying to get what are the needs that are hurting people the most in our city. It's paying the bills. It's making their notes. It's dodging the repo man. It's unemployment. It's finances. It's addiction. It's whatever it is. They are intentionally getting involved personally. I love this. Church Fuel actually says, get involved personally, not organizationally, is a way to truly understand the needs of the community. This is what you have to do. Get involved. Some of the best, and I don't mean to offend anyone if you have a full-time pastorship, but some of the best pastors that have the biggest thumb on the heartbeat of the community are bivocational because they're not in the church 40 hours a week. They're working at the grocery store. They're doing real estate. They are making customer service calls. They know what people's objections and thoughts are. And I think that's really cool. So if you are working full time, I hope you're not spending your full time. I think many churches, many boards, committee boards, personnel boards, need to let their pastors off the leash and say you don't have to be in the office for 40 hours. You need to be out there in front of people, figuring out what's hurting them, so you can shepherd the church to address those needs and initiate discipleship in that way. So that's what we've got to do. And, again, this is kind of how we should respond. We need to respond by getting our name out there and letting people know who we are, why we exist, and how to get involved. What is important with our church? Nona Jones has a fantastic quote that I had totally forgotten, but then I remembered because in that Church Fuel article, there's an advertisement and they quote Nona in that advertisement. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Nona is, I don't remember her exact title, but she's basically in charge of faith partnerships at Facebook. She basically is the liaison between faith-based organizations and Facebook to kind of lead a team in how can Facebook better serve churches and create better tools and services that churches can use to better communicate and get involved with their communities. It's pretty cool. So, one of the things that she said was, we need to stop fishing in the same aquarium, which means, hey, everything that we do, a lot of what we do as a church just comes down to the 80 people, 100 people that are already a part of our church. And in order to be on mission, in order to accomplish the Great Commission, our church, our body of people has to be out in the community. And as a pastor, as the leader and shepherd, part of what we have to do is be a representative as well in a more official capacity. Whereas the church may go represent Jesus, you go and represent the church. And so, go connect with other organizations, go make radio appearances, blog appearances, TV appearances. Don't be afraid of that, because that may be the time. The time you make a guest appearance. I would love to see a church. We used to have those church recipe books where all the members would submit a recipe and the church would put and bind together a recipe book and sell it as a fundraiser. I would love the church to say, like, hey, at our potluck, this is the dish that always goes out first. Make a guest post on a local blog, Houston Foodies or something like that, and say this is a recommendation from our church. That gets your name out there. It shows that you're regular people. It shows that, hey, you actually have fun and enjoy life. Let me check out this church. And if you follow the definitive church marketing method, when they check out your church, you've got a compelling story that people can connect with and see how they fit in with on their own spiritual journey. They've got an actionable website. People can find them on Google. People can see exactly what they believe, but not only that, how they address the physical needs, the spiritual needs, the mental needs that we are going through. And again, this is why these steps here to post more non-Sunday content, to get more of your community out there, more of your church out into the community, to learn the needs of your community. These other foundations need to be put in place. You need to know who you are. You need to know, you need to have the right foundation in place so that when people find you, they can understand who you are. You have to do all this before you start connecting with people. And then once you do have all that, you have to be everywhere, because the false teachers are. And I'm like, hey, it's very frustrating that we've got this church doing great works and we've got this church that's teaching falsely and hurting more people than they are helping and misguiding more people than they are helping. And unfortunately, they have more money, they have more means, they have more connections, they have more presence. And we have to compete with that. This is just the honest truth. We shouldn't, but we have to. And anytime that we shut our mouth when a false teacher is teaching, we're going to be held accountable for that. And so as a church, we have to be everywhere. And I'm not saying go and look where this house of worship that is actually, not correct in their teaching and theology. I'm not saying go where they are and shun them and shout them and call them out. But we have to use everything in our arsenal to connect with more people. And we've got churches that are connecting with thousands of people in their community that had heard of them, but didn't know about them, that didn't know where they are, that didn't know exactly, hey, I didn't know church could be this way. I didn't know churches were serving our community in this capacity. And that's something that I can get behind. That's something that's important to me. And then in that moment, they hear about the good news, the salvation of Christ. We have to be everywhere. We have to do everything in our command to get the word out there so we can stop fishing in our aquarium and start fishing in the community. We need to be fishers of men, not farmers that are just, hey, we've got our fish and we're just going to constantly breed them and, stay here in our little bubble. We have to go out there. We have to be out there. And the best way to do that is to get your marketing plan in place. It's not enough just to put something out there. You have to actively go get people's attention and then call them to action. That is what you have to do. So if you have any questions about that, give me a call. We'll put the number at the end, 832-861-7654. Give us a holler here. Put a comment down below. We will be doing a voicemail. So if you want to leave a voicemail, play it, ask a question or anything like that, we're putting that up pretty soon here. So you can put that on the site. Thank you for watching. Again, like and subscribe wherever you are, and to go out there and do whatever it takes to become the best known organization in your community. God bless.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the Best Known Church Show with Justin Nava. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest news, strategies, and resources that you need to reach 10x more people and become the best known in your community. To send us a message or leave a voicemail for Justin to be played on a future show, visit thebestknownchurchshow.com. And if you'd like to work with us so you can focus on your ministry, give us a call at 832-861-7654. Until next time, stay outrageous, unreasonable, and relentless.